I just cannot imagine looking at the world today and going, the problem with the United States is it's just too darn competitive, and that capitalism is just.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk.
And we are back with another edition of the Daily Dots, and I am joined, as always, by the brain trust himself, Mr. Chase Taylor. I'm making somewhat of a return. I would love to say it's a triumphant return. It's not triumphant. Did not win the club championship this year. And that would mark, I think, about probably the 8th time that I have not won it. Hope springs eternal, though, Chase.
As a Browns fan, I know what it's like to say, waiting for next year.
Yeah. Yep. That's kind of what that's turned into. Yeah. Love to give you a blow by blow, but it was probably don't want to hear it.
And by Browns fan, I also mean University of Houston, Cleveland Guardians / Indians. It kind of goes deeper.
Yeah. I would have said being a Seattle Mariners fan, I've experienced that. But I've made it to the finals before, so at least I've had some success in the club championship. Just never been able to get over the hump, It's a good thing I don't play golf for a living. Let's put it that way. Anyway, I feel like we keep saying this every single day, and yet I keep feeling like the board gets increasingly more and more complicated. Crazy stuff going on. Before we get into that, had some news out of Japan today. Don't know how important that is, but we can get into that. Some decent moves to consider in metals like gold and silver, dollar rates. Let's get a rundown on the indexes though and start from there.
Yep. S&P closed up 0.14. The Q's up 0.5. Despite that, though, small caps are down 0.4, almost the same for equal weight, down 0.34. Which means it was a Mag 7 day, Mag 7 up 0.73. All world ex-US beat the US, was up 0.6. That's thanks to the dollar being down almost 0.6, although a small bounce from the lows today. Oil down about 0.5%. Nat gas got creamed, down 7% on for a month. Gold was up about 1.5%. Silver up about 2%. Platinum up 2%. Again, thanks to dollar weakness probably. Copper was up about 0.5%, and yield land, the two-year was pretty flat, but the 10-year rallied 4 basis points, so a good day for bonds. And it's worth noting Japan was closed, so we don't know the reaction just yet from their bond yields. But it seemed like a bit of a buy the rumor, sell the news on their election. Well, like you said, we can get into that more.
It wasn't really a surprise, was it?
No, everyone. We pretty much knew they were likely to lose the upper chamber of parliament. It was just kind of like how big, and it was pretty big. But the prime minister is going to stay on, despite the fact that they now don't have, either of the chambers of parliament, which weakens him dramatically. He was already kind of weak, and not really that many people liked him. A lot of people are calling for his resignation, but he's saying he's not going to. Probably going to keep pushing back on the fiscal stimulus the new parties that are coming in want. But my assumption is he's going to have to say yes to some of that stuff, or,
It sounds like there was a bit of a referendum against the guy. What's the issue?
I mean, it's against the party in general. The LDP has been kind of slowly losing power. They keep having, they keep stepping on a rake and having scandals. Like inflation is it's weird because in Japan, they rooted for inflation like you would not believe. And I don't mean just inflation, but like a real wage price spiral. They were like begging for it, but now they're starting to get it. And imagine this: people don't like it. People don't like the cost of living going up, so that's starting to backfire on them to a degree. So you're going to get some pretty big political changes. You already have, but you're going to continue to see things done a little differently. I don't know how long he'll last. He's going to have to pull a lot of stuff together. And obviously, this is a big deal because they're in the middle of negotiating a very significant possible trade deal with the United States. So it's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
There's an interesting thing, and this is going to sound kind of funny coming from me about this, but it seems to me that the West has forgotten some very important things about its economy and how it runs. And I would very much throw us and Japan into that lump. And ironically, there are some communist Chinese people that are reminding or should be reminding us of those lessons, which is, and God bless the guy. He's a gift. If you really like reading completely thoughtless, so stupid they hurt you comments,
I do not. Go on.
Mark Ruffalo's your guy, the actor. His repeated calls, capitalism has failed us, and you're just like, brother, you're so stupid. I'm surprised you can get out of your apartment every morning. If you and what I mean by this is we've gotten spoiled in the West. We've thought that we can have our cake and eat it too. And what China is showing, and I think that their phones, more importantly, their cars, are a perfect example of this. You're right. If you think capitalism is malfunctioning, you're correct because it's been short-circuited. It's not competitive enough, right? You don't get your cake and eat it too. There are consequences for policy decisions. The inflation thing in Japan is a perfect example of what is going wrong. And now I think there's probably 10 examples in the U.S. for every one we can point out in Japan. They're just the latest. But for how long have you and I been sitting there saying, and a lot of other people, inflation is like the dog chasing the car. The problem is when he catches it, right? And it's, we want what we want, but we don't want any of the downside. And then we turn around and get all mad because capitalism is malfunctioning. And you look around and go, but buddy, like, look at the car industry. We did away with competition in the West as far as the car industry is concerned. For whatever was left of the competition in the auto industry, it was executed no way to not, right? Meanwhile, you flip over to China, who is eating everybody's lunch. And they've had, I can't remember the numbers, but I mean, at one point, upwards of 1,000 different auto manufacturers or something like that, where it's just been like a battle bot extraordinaire, just, them knocking each other out. And then you look at what's left standing. Unbelievable. You and I were talking about it over the weekend, that new car put out by Xiaomi, right? What are we looking at? 500-600 miles of range, $35,000. Thing's got adjustable rear seats. It's got tech in the car that you don't even see in our best cars,
Yep.
Right? Removable screens from the back seat. This is a $35,000 car. But what is that a product of? It's not a product of the communist practices in China. It's a product of the unadulterated capitalist practices. Yep. Shocker. Competition makes things better, right?
It's exactly like the U.S. auto industry was here at the turn of the century when it was the same thing. It was 500 companies in Detroit, just insane competition, doing anything they could do to get a minor edge. And the innovation that came out of that was astronomical. And you see that in basically every field in China. And it makes sense that all of a sudden they're like ripping up the quality chain of basically everything they make.
Well, and then the calls, and then, look, and I don't want to get too political. It just hurts me to see people so stupid making such stupid comments. I mean, that's what stupid people do. But when you look at, if you want to know what even less capitalism would look like in the United States 10 years from now, just look at Europe. Just look at Europe. Like, look, and I am not sitting there saying we should get rid of every union. I'm not sitting there saying that. I'm just saying we're getting warning shots in the West that we're not paying attention to. And it's getting to the point where it's starting to freak me out. More importantly, it's making me even, I'm finding myself with a less and less ability every day to stomach the comments of these idiots where I'm like, hey guys, you can keep talking about capitalism failing us while they just take massive amounts of market share, steel industry. When you look at what they're doing, I do not think it's hyperbolic to sit there and say if there are not some drastic measures taken in the U.S. automobile manufacturing sector, it may not exist in 5 years. And I don't think that's hyperbolic. I'm not saying there won't be cars along with their names on them, but it will probably be the product of less competitive practices and more protectionist measures here in the U.S.
And like I was saying earlier today, like if you want to see those ultimate protectionist, what happens there in the auto industry, you go to like the old Soviet Union where there was like one car company and they just created these terrible vehicles, but they were self-sufficient and they were made in the Soviet Union.
I think you're being a bit hard on Yugos. That's just me though. A fine family automobile. If there was plenty of flexibility you had when you arrived somewhere,
we go to Cuba where everyone's driving the cars from like the 50s and 60s.
Studebakers,
which those are pretty sweet, but
very reliable, old school, easy to work on too. You don't have to worry about things like computers. The other thing is they're EMP proof.
I was just about to say, if we get the solar flare, where you're good.
Yeah, I mean, if Fidel's going to be cruising around in his 68 Studebaker like nothing ever happened, and meanwhile we're all going to be. No, it's just funny though. At a time where you sit there and people are calling, like, I just can't imagine looking at the world today and going, I know what the problem is here. Capitalism has failed us. And you're like, where has it been? Can you point it out to me, where that has existed? And I'm not saying it answers every problem, right? Like, I'm anti-maximalist, right? Anytime somebody's a something maxi, I'm not probably going to get along with them that well, just because that's not life, right? There's give and takes. I don't think capitalism is perfect, but if you're sitting there looking at the board today, sitting at the setup today, looking at Europe, who really, like I said, I said 10 years. They're probably just 15 to 20 years down the exact same path that we were on, except we're tacking on even more debt at a faster pace than they are. Now that picture would change if they indeed are asked to carry more of their defense spending.
Yeah. Just actually getting their economy going for once.
Yeah. But I don't want to linger too much on that, but if you guys aren't aware of it, do yourself a favor, go out there and research that Xiaomi car. Look at some of those BYD cars.
Yeah. Just go hit YouTube or just Google around, find like the best cars made there, and then go look at like a little YouTube video of like what all it offers, and it'll blow your mind. It's like the Ford CEO driving a Chinese vehicle and saying it's way better than theirs. I mean,
yeah,
he's like, this is what we're competing against. Like,
yeah, and when you look at that car, here's the troubling part to me when I was looking at that car, and I'm not an automobile manufacturer, but we've looked into this pretty thoroughly. There's no way in the world you manufacture that car that you can buy from China for 35 grand. I bet you it isn't possible to manufacture it here for 60.
Probably not. Yeah. And that the hard thing is that's true for most products, for most like physical goods. Like we just can't. Now, throwing significant effort behind it to like do some catching up, like scaling some things, like you can make it better, but as of today, you pick the thing. We can't compete on price with China on making just about anything.
Yeah,
or quality. That's the hard part. I used to be able to accept the price parts. Like, well, whatever. They have cheap labor. They yada yada yada. But now it's like it's one thing to not be able to compete on price. It's another thing whenever it's price and quality. That is.
Now the one bit of pushback I have on that is that history has showed us time and time again when it comes to America, where there is a will, there's a way. Now I know that we have a massive thing to overcome just in terms of labor costs, but if you had Congress, now I'm asking for a lot here, I understand. If you had the White House, Congress, the UAW, and the heads of the automobile manufacturers here in the U.S., domestic manufacturers, get together, I honestly believe if the goal, if they now this will probably just lead to more automobile manufacturer bailouts. Is probably what it'll lead to, right? I mean, just I don't want to sound too negative, but I've been watching this movie for too long.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ.
But if there was real impetus, if there was real urgency, if there was a real desire to do this, and the needed players were involved and were ready to do what it took, I think we could compete. I think we could figure out ways to close that gap. I just don't see the political will. I don't see the focus. I don't see a necessary level of unity that would be required to make that happen. The other thing is I just see too many people with their head in the sand that are not aware of the tidal wave of competition that is coming at us, and it's coming at us fast. This thing that we saw growing in the background for all these years, talking about how they're going to grow up one day and start throwing their weight around, that day's today.
Big time.
They're here. And I don't, like I said, I don't see the pushback needed. And, you know, I think potentially tariffs could be part of an answer. But if you are, another lesson history teaches us, if the only protection you have is price controls and tariffs, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You're going to lose.
Right. And the more you put those up, the harder it is to compete in some ways, because you think about the incentives for the domestic producer. It's kind of like you don't have to compete with them, so you don't, right? Whenever it's the Wild West and it's compete or die, like there's so much more incentive to like get in there and compete against the best.
Yep.
If you don't have to compete against the best, you just compete against each other, which isn't the best. And like that's where, like, you know, 20 years, let's say we do massive tariff wall on autos. 20 years later, we've competed against crap. They've competed against the best. Like, it's kind of obvious where that ends up. That's just kind of natural incentives, the way this all tends to shake out. That's it's like an unseen problem I have with too much protectionism on non-strategic stuff is you end up letting your domestic producers basically get away with being second rate. It's almost institutionalizing mediocrity, which bothers me as a human that strives for excellence and wants every part of the country to do so.
Yeah, and it's just, and then when you hear people, and again, it's just an actor, but I know that that same sentiment is echoed by so many people. It's, you kind of want to, you know, shoot a flare up in the air, do something like light off fire, get their attention, right, and sit there and go, if you think that you are about ready to get your ass kicked on a competitive level, if you think this is a socialism issue that can be fixed, God help you, you're going to expedite this process and you're going to 3x the time in which they completely clean us out. And they're using your playbook against you. Meanwhile, you're calling for increased socialist practices. They're out competing you, man.
If you think about America from, say, 1870 to 1970, the dramatic transformation, the out competing of everyone and everything, essentially, like I hate it, but I feel like China is entering. They're like an 1880 U.S. like comp, where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, like where did they come from? Like starting to throw their weight around and like value add. If you remember, you did some interviews with me, you know, years before I joined, and I was talking about like, hey, like China's going to get stuck in the middle income trap. The only way to get out of that is to go value add, like really climb up that chain, going from just making like the intermediary stuff to making like the final product. And I didn't think they would do it. And here we are, like, oh, they're absolutely doing it. Like,
not that fast.
I didn't think they would do it at all, much less this fast, especially under Xi. Like, I just figured like he was going to crimp, you know, the innovative spirit too much, but I guess not.
You know, the funny thing about it is when you look at what's happened in their automobile sector, you know what it sort of reminds me of? It's kind of seems like the equivalent of a modern day Oklahoma land rush. You know what I mean? It's like they just opened up the industry and told everybody, go for it, right? They offered some government subsidies early on, some help, get everybody there. But now we've all helped you out. No more subsidies. Like I said, it's like a giant battle bot tournament.
Yeah.
Let the strongest one stand. And meanwhile, you look here in the U.S., and this is hitting us at a time where we have probably been, I mean, for probably at least 35 to 40 years, if not longer, we've been playing protectionist games with our automobile manufacturers.
Exactly. It's instead of making all of the, government largesse for innovation and for competition, it's more for, building moats around what we already have. And that goes back to just, big players capture the government and then they play to each other. And obviously the rot that comes from that is significant. I think part of this is just that, like, if you are able to keep competition away from you by setting up not like tariff walls, but just regulatory walls within your own country, I mean, it's kind of what you end up getting, just overprotection of national champions. And one of my fears is, moving forward, if we just pick 2-3 winners of everything and just throw all the resources at them, like, that's not the answer. To me, the answer is to throw a whole bunch of money at like R&D and like almost like government X prizes for, hey, like, here's what we need. I know this is a crazy goal.
Yep.
This is what we need. Here's a giant pot of money if you can do this, that kind of stuff. And like, let the best and brightest actually make a bunch of money while chasing something crazy. When you go back to Manhattan Project, World War II era, like, it was just like, hey, look, we need this. Here's a whole bunch of money if you can do this. And
that's
the innovation that came out of it was insane.
And that's getting back to our roots in a lot of ways. I mean, when you look at so many great developments here in the country, and I think that's where so many people have gotten so confused, right? You've got the people on the right, of which, usually I am one of those people, especially as it relates to economic issues, sitting there going, no, come on, free markets, capitalism, all that kind of stuff. You have people on the left. No, look, when we've done our best stuff, it's been a combination of the two, right? And it's been, like you said, government can be involved. It's all about how they're involved, right? Are they incentivizing? Are they accelerating demand, like generational turnover, innovation generational? Meaning, when government steps up and adds incentives like that, they actually shorten the turnover in industries, right? Like, where normally you'd sit there and go, okay, if we left these guys on their own, they're going to evolve every year. The products are going to get a little better. When you go in there as a government like that, you're supercharging that process. You're helping them skip like leaps, right?
Instead of going from risk in an area where they wouldn't take them.
Right. Instead of going from version 1.1 or 1.0 to 1.1, they're going from version 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0 to 4.0, and then that competition's driving them at the same time. And that's one of the age-old frustrating topics that I have, or things that I get so frustrated with about that capitalism versus socialism debate. Because I just look at people and I'm like, show me an area in life where the outcomes are not better when the competition is fierce.
Right.
I just don't know of any. I haven't seen it anywhere.
I think it's pretty clear. It's why, our healthcare system is such a train wreck. We've basically legislated a few small winners and they get a bunch of largesse, and no one can really compete with them the way everything's structured. So you get no competition, no price power, no price transparency. It's pretty simple what you end up with in that environment.
Well, at some point we started trading guaranteed outcomes for guaranteed opportunities. And when you start getting guaranteed outcomes, it's
right.
It ain't the you're going to get a present on Christmas morning, but it ain't the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip, man.
And to be fair, like, this stuff is old as time. If you go back and read about like some of the automakers and stuff, like, there was actually like a weird little patent guild for the car.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, you can't build a car. Only we can build a car. And same with like certain kinds of tires and brakes and everything. It's like, no, you can't do that unless we let you in the club, and you can't get in the club. So there was a bunch of like walls. It was just, we had crazy people that were like, yeah, I don't care about your wall. I'm going to run it over. Or, found a way to like get big enough to buy a bunch of them out or whatever. So like, it's not like this stuff's new. It's just, I think it's more pervasive, and it's more inside of policy than it used to be. It's kind of more top down, these, internal barriers that we put on like real competition across, in these important areas. It's kind of like now it's like, well, Boeing can't lose and GM can't lose and Ford can't lose. We'll make sure of all that. And then like, so no one can compete too hard with these guys, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and meanwhile, I mean, look at it. I mean, so they're kicking our tails up and down the street, with the automobiles already. Okay. Huawei's put out a better phone than iPhone. I mean, you look at it, they're coming after our biggest, areas of strength, our biggest dominant sectors.
Right.
And
that's why the trade deals doesn't work, is because what are we going to sell them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And what I wish is that this should be an alarm bell. This should be a siren waking everybody up and going, hey, guys, we can always come back. It's America. We can do anything, but not like this. We got to come together. We got to quit this nonsense. We got to quit calls for increased socialism. I mean, I just cannot imagine looking at the world today and going, the problem with the United States is it's just too darn competitive, and that capitalism is just, I mean, I get what people are saying, right? They're seeing that crony capitalism. They're seeing, anti-competitive. Like, I get what they're saying, but that ain't capitalism. It's the opposite.
Yeah.
And man, it's tough to watch. And if you want to know what we're saying, what was the name that, I'm forgetting his name. I had him on the show. Great interview. Jonathan, he wrote the book about it being, things being anti-competitive and how sectors have changed so much. Jonathan Tepper.
Yep.
Jonathan Tepper wrote a great book about this. And if you want to understand what we're talking about if you keep hearing this myth, or if you find yourself sitting there going, I'm not sure whether I agree. I hear what the capitalists are saying, but I hear these people making some pretty compelling arguments on the socialist side. Go read his book, because he really doesn't come at it from an ideological position. This isn't some right-wing dude at all.
It was a data-driven approach to answer a question he had himself.
Yeah. And if you want to know what's happening to our economy, what you will see is that the less competitive we have gotten, the worse things have gotten for everybody, including wages, including labor. Nobody's benefited. Now, ironically, the people that have benefited are the companies, right? Profits have never been bigger, right? But less of that profit is and why is less of that profit trickling down? Because it's a less competitive environment. In a really competitive environment, you got to do stuff like Facebook just did, which is pay $100 million signing bonus to a software engineer, a code writer.
And they've been doing a lot of that.
Right. Why? Why is labor getting paid that much in that industry? Because it's really competitive. There's a land rush going on.
The stakes are that high.
Yep. And God dang it, man. It's very frustrating. There's got to be some good news in here somewhere. Is there some good news?
So yeah, I have a couple of things. One, you're seeing venture capital flow more to real stuff than nonsense. The next, dog walking app or whatever. That's where, 5 years ago, all VC money was going to junk. Now, if you look, a lot of VC money is kind of following, into like hard tech, like real stuff, defense tech, things that are real, and obviously a lot's going into AI, which makes perfect sense. So that's good to see. And I think if you look at some of the educational data, so to me, the epicenter of everything we're talking about, the biggest problem is an erosion of human capital in America, especially native-born human capital. And you see that getting a little better. If you look at what degrees people are going for, like Gen Z goes for real degrees, not to take shots at other degrees, but they're going after science, technology, engineering, math kind of stuff, and some of the other maybe liberal arts that aren't pure trash, or at least philosophy instead of insert bad degree here, so I don't out anyone specifically. Versus like millennials, we all went to school for nonsense. Basically, if you look at the numbers, and then Gen Z is like, no, like let's go for some hard tech type stuff.
You're talking to finance and econ right here, pal. Now, I mean, my econ minor felt a lot more hard sciencey before I really understood the practice of economics. Put less stock in that now. As a matter of fact, I think I had to spend the first 7 years of my career unlearning what I learned.
Econometric mumbo jumbo.
Oh, well, that's a simple way to look at that. I'm just going to use that. And then
that is my model that doesn't reflect reality.
That doesn't work. Yeah. Weird. No, yeah, we've got to find our fastball again. And anytime I hear somebody talking about it just look at China, guys. Socialist practices ain't going to keep us in this fight, and it's not going to keep us competitive. And unless we can pull our heads out and unite, at least on that wavelength.
I hate to say it, but honestly, you can almost like copy. We had the Made in China 2025 thing. If you go, I encourage people to like actually go and read through like what their goals were. Basically, honestly, we just need to do something like that, but like it just made in the U.S. 2035, and whole government approach to back and support education and real stuff, and not just like crazy awesome like engineering programs, but down to like technical schools that could be like a 2-year thing to like run a nuclear plant, like be an operator, right? All kinds of stuff like that, like whole government approach, make that stuff free or subsidized or whatever you got to do. Throw a bunch of money at R&D. Make sure that energy is incredibly cheap in the country. Think like all this like easy stuff instead of making sure entrenched company X gets another treat.
Yeah, but we got to throw another one at you. You got to wake up, man. Another issue you got, until parents are less concerned about the right type of sex education in the classroom, right, and are more concerned about whether their kids can actually read, and are more concerned about whether those kids are caught up on international standards as far as math goes, right?
Yeah.
There's another issue, meaning, people go, the educational system. Well, yeah, okay, but yeah, it needs some pushback. But what about the parents? Right? Like there's all this tacit approval that we all gripe about the outcomes, and then we all sit there and gripe about, we don't like it. We're losing our edge. Da da da. Meanwhile, but I want Charlie to be applauded because he finished 10th.
Right.
No, Charlie doesn't deserve to get applauded because he's competing with Chinese kids that get grounded if they get second. Right. And maybe that sounds a little bit intense, but I just, life is a competitive game, and we're teaching kids that it's not. And I just think that's a travesty. They get out there. I've always said, they get out there. Everybody's a winner. Johnny's a winner. They get out there. They take one shot to the chops, fold up like a cheap lawn chair because they've been sold a false bill of goods. And then we're going to go ask those kids to compete against. I can tell you, those kids in China have been hearing all that crap.
No,
there's no participation awards in that culture.
No,
you bring home the hardware. You sit outside with the dog, if you're lucky. But yeah, man, that was just you and I have been talking about it. This isn't news to me, but to see that car, to see it in person with the price tag on it, and to look at how on every level, that talk about blowing away the Model 3, which U.S. manufacturers couldn't even compete with that.
Oh, no.
The Model 3. Then look at that thing. Eye-opening.
Yeah, and the Model 3 is basically just a iPad with uncomfortable seats in it.
Yeah, that
doesn't even almost compare to these Chinese vehicles.
Oh, it's, again, guys.
And we're talking about that like mid-level vehicle. The low level you can buy for under 10 grand, and they're pretty sweet.
We're talking about the $35,000 one.
Right.
You can't even get a new Honda Civic for that.
And if you go up to like 75, 80 to like BYD's like loaded SUV, look at it balling. It's insane what it can do.
How big is it?
Like comparable to like a pretty good sized SUV here.
Okay, like a Tahoe size. No, it doesn't give you the full suburban size.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's probably just loaded up with Chinese tech.
It's nuts, like how luxurious and nice it is.
The CCP just listening into your family car rides and everything like that.
No doubt.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
if they wanted to.
Yeah, or I'm sure they've got no interest in that. They've never been ones to poke into their own citizens' private lives. Anything?
They have as many cameras as people, but yeah.
Yeah. Do we have anything else interesting? We got tech earnings coming out this week.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting. This week is a very, very light data week. Honestly, the home sales and other than that, there's really nothing worth mentioning.
Well, there was something worth mentioning. So for the Tesla diehards, there's a new business line that they announced today. Line of business. You hear about this?
I did not.
They're going to do some restaurants.
Please tell me you're joking.
I am not.
What?
Yeah, where they can. It seems pretty like that's why I'm looking at that stock, just going. I mean,
for real restaurants?
that I don't think yes, it was talking about building up restaurants around the supercharging complexes.
Oh, gotcha.
So where people can, but
Make charging suck less.
yeah, I just feel like it feels like that stock to its shareholders is like a massive sword of Damocles, and you can see it just hanging by one thread where you're just like, I mean, they better hope that everybody keeps looking at that thing in a very unfundamental way, because that's the thing is you just don't see the magic press release that's going to come out and bail them out here, and yet everybody's acting as if nothing's changed, and that I just feel like that thing's about ready to get waxed, which is probably why they'll announce another huge horrible quarter. Musk will say something, the stock will go way up.
I will say, given the liquidity backdrop right now and the way, like, especially the higher beta stocks are moving, the fact that Tesla's just kind of running along sideways alone suggests like not good.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, look at if you did a relative chart of Lucid Motors against Tesla, Lucid all of a sudden crushing Tesla. Like, there's a perfect example of, like, even within the same field, right?
Yeah. That's crazy. What I'd like to do is compare like Lucid's top of the line car to BYD's. That'd be an interesting comp, because that Lucid's pretty incredible.
They look good, that's for sure.
I
know nothing about them, but
I've got a buddy of mine that owns one that the loaded version, the top of the line one. It's unbelievable. It does a lot of really cool stuff. But again, that's also like $160,000 car.
Exactly.
Right? I would love to see it side by side to the comparable BYD and just kind of see how it stacked up.
It would just be not comparable on price.
Yeah, boy, that's the tough part. Also, what they must have had a breakthrough on batteries, because their range has really shot up recently.
Yep, batteries coming out of China have gotten dramatically better of late. And if you think about that from like a grid storage, battery storage angle and stuff like that, this stuff's
that's a huge deal too.
It's going to permeate. Not to mention, your leaf blower and your lawnmower and your cordless drill. Like this, just lithium batteries have gotten a lot better in the last 2-3 years. Oh, and all the different variations of lithium batteries, because the R&D on batteries in China has been insane. Like, they just do 500 companies doing science experiments, and eventually one's like, oh, hey, this works pretty good.
See, and that to me is the areas where we could be competing against China on. Maybe the days of us being able to assemble an automobile that's priced competitively with them, maybe that's over. What isn't over is our ability to produce better parts and components, operating systems, battery technology, things like that will be needed in the automobiles regardless of where they're manufactured. And those are areas why I think we still can compete with them. On the technological side, obviously we've got to overcome the labor cost difference. But there are things that I think that we could do internally to help offset that disparity as well. But it's just going to take every party coming to the table and working together. And unfortunately, that seems like the least likely of all outcomes.
Yeah, to me, you throw money at national labs and the best universities that are doing that, the frontline R&D and a lot of this stuff. Sad part is we're kind of doing the opposite.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I got. You got anything else for today?
No, good.
All right, kiddos, that does it for us. We'll finish up right there. And as always, we'll be back again tomorrow. You don't want to miss us on social media. You can get the video feeds on YouTube. Just search Know Your Risk Podcast. You can just search Know Your Risk Podcast anywhere. If people are interested, I will be on Ninja Trader Live tomorrow with Tracy Shukart.
Nice.
And Ninja Trader, you know him don't you know him?
Vaguely familiar.
Yeah. So
I did retweet that. I saw you were going to be on there.
Going to be on there for 20 minutes or so. Not even sure what the topic is, so I'm going in there very well read and prepared. So anyway, I think we're just talking shop, but that'll be on tomorrow morning pretty early. I think it's coming on like 8:20 Eastern time. So I'm going to be up. I'm usually up at that time. I'm not usually talking on a podcast at that time, but
same.
It'll be an early day. Anyway, so we'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. And until tomorrow, you're listening to Know Your Risk Podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskpodcast.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.